Welcome to another episode of the MDM Podcast. I'm Mike Hockett, our executive editor. Power transmission and motion control has long been core to MDM's industrial hard goods audience, and it's an industry sector that has seen tremendous consolidation over the past 2 decades. Meanwhile, it's also seen considerable innovation in the current decade in the form of raising industry awareness, career development, and especially in product information management, or PIM. Product data sharing has long been a sticking point in industrial distribution, or at least in the Americas, as distributors and manufacturers often like to keep their data playing cards close to the vest. But both sides have seen significant benefits from collaborating on PIM data, and both the Power Transmission Distributors Association and the Bearing Specialists Association have really driven that forward by creating and expanding the Product Information Exchange Platform, or PIE, launched at the start of 2023. This episode features my conversation with a pair of longtime PTMC industry veterans, Brian Short, who garnered PTDA's Warren Pike Lifetime Achievement Award this past fall, and Bill Shepard, who has spent the past 38 years at Bearings distributor BDI and helped develop the PIE platform. I had each of them share their career journey, their perspective on the biggest changes they've seen in the industry, the role of AI in industrial distribution, the state of PIM data sharing and the PIE platform, and more. This episode is brought to you by MDM's free virtual AI for Distributors Summit, which will be on March 12th. This event will provide real-world use cases, how-to testimonials, and thought-provoking analysis from distribution executives, solution providers, team leaders, and other executives about how to select the right AI tools for you or how to scale what you're already doing with the technology. You can find event details and registration for our virtual AI summit from its link in the events dropdown on mdm.com and in the blog promoting this podcast. With that, enjoy this episode. Brian, Bill, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Mike.
Mike, thanks for having us.
To set the stage here, I'd love to have each of you start off with a timeline of sorts of your career. Brian, can you begin with how you started with Brenning Bearings all the way up to your recent retirement?
Sure. How much time do we have? But seriously, I graduated from Niagara University in 1980 with a degree in transportation management. The Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad had offered me a management trainee position that was going to start in July. Around the same time, Congress was deregulating the trucking industry, shipping industry, and the railroad industry. Pretty soon, Chesapeake and Ohio could buy other railroads, so they didn't need new management trainees. While that was going on, I was sailing my dad's boat and drinking with my buddies every night, knowing I had a position in July. And when that dropped off, my parents strongly, and I underline strongly, suggested that I find a job somewhere because my current lifestyle was not sustainable. And that's how I got to Brenning Bearings. They had a job open for, believe it or not, warehouse and shipping clerk. Here I am with a college degree as a shipping clerk. But it was stated pretty clearly that was to help me learn the products and the business a little bit, and then I'd be brought up front. Shortly after that, I was given a desk with a rack of catalogs and price lists and a phone, and it started ringing, and people had questions. And it was drinking through a fire hose, really. But it was great, and I got excellent training I went to Fafter School, I went to Morse School, I did Timken Timken courses that you had to submit to your Timken rep, and he would grade them for you. So it was all really good training, and in it for an industry I had no idea even existed. And we hear that story a lot, I think, that a lot of people in our industry never heard of bearings and seals and belts and all that stuff that go into it. But along the way, I guess I impressed the DACO rep because he quietly pursued me to replace him when he opened his own distributorship in Rochester because he couldn't get any ground. Gates had such a prominent position. And Bill, I don't know if you remember this, but I had to take a year and go work somewhere else. I couldn't go right from Groening to, it was frowned upon to steal, quote unquote, a rep from one of your distributors after they put in the effort and money on training and everything. So I took a year off, did some real estate business with my uncle, and then came back a year later and started as a field salesperson with Dayco.
And is that a common practice in the industry or whether in the past or today, of not being able to go right from being a rep right to a distributor or manufacturer to a distributor in the same channel?
I use the phrase "it's frowned upon."
Yeah, there are actual non-compete contracts that some distributors make their employees sign, and same thing for manufacturers. So it's pretty common still today.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but I was at a sales meeting, and one of our sales leaders asked, "Has anyone had any experience with Bearings Incorporated," which Bruning was part of, became Applied Industrial Technologies? And I raised my hand and looked around. I was the only one with my hand up. So I was able to advance my career and become a major account manager for Dayco at Applied Industrial, which was really a window into how a major distributor operated and came in very useful in the balance of my career. But also in the 90s, Dayco was doing a lot of acquisitions, and I got a great taste of M&A, mergers and acquisitions activities during that time period. But at some point, we became the acquiree, not the acquirer. In year 2000, we were sold to Parker, and I was designated to go work for Parker Hannafin. And I didn't feel comfortable doing that, so I stepped out of the industry for another 7-year segment and worked for a local marketing company. But I stayed in touch with several PTDA members that I knew and actually did some work for them, some marketing programs. And then in 2007, I got the itch to get back in the industry because it had been so great for me. And talked to Mary Sue Lyon, and she allowed me to come out to Palm Desert and interview with a number of manufacturers, which was great. And from there, I accepted a position with Dish-O-Matic, a supplier of oil seals, more of a reseller than a manufacturer, but which got me back in the groove with the PTDA. And I had started PTDA in 1992 and then had to drop out for the years of 2000 to 2007. But I was glad to be back and got Dish-O-Matic involved in it as well. Then KDON called and asked if I would help them with their distribution channel. And I didn't know what I was getting into at first because they were very OEM focused and really couldn't spell distribution. And I kind of got them moving in that direction, got some successes with distributors. When we had a period of time of success because of windmill bearings, their SKF came and bought us. And I didn't feel like working for SKF. It's nice to have options. So I went to work for NSK. They too were looking for help with the distribution channel, specifically major accounts. And actually, both NSK, I spent several years with NSK and a couple of years with Regal before they merged with Rexnord, exclusively calling on major accounts like BDI and others. And then Vandenberg was looking for a sales director to get into, and the president, I'll be transparent here, the president is a friend of mine from when I was at Dish-O-Matic. And he knew I wanted to get relocated to Buffalo from Ohio, where we lived, and made me an offer to come over to Vandenberg. And I started the week the pandemic started. So we had about a year and a half of major supply chain issues. And then we finally settled in and got some work going with distributors. And the rest is history. I'm leaving it in the hands of Barb Ross, another award winner. So they're in good hands.
So you've stayed within the bearings channel, all this time, but definitely some interesting career pivots along the way there.
Yes.
But yeah, just a lot of stops along the way.
And, you learn, as Bill knows, you learn from each one, no matter what your title is. I know Bill's done marketing stuff and other things and has done sales stuff. And you just adapt and try to build on it.
Bill, your timeline seems to be a lot more linear than Brian's, with your past 37 years all at BDI. But that doesn't mean it hasn't evolved along the way. Can you give your recap of your different titles and responsibilities there at BDI and just what you're doing today?
Sure, Mike. I'm in my 38th year with BDI, and similar to Brian, we have very similar starting to our career. My first position with BDI was in Waterloo, Iowa in 1987, and I was driving parts into John Deere plants. There was 5 or 6 different John Deere plants right there, and that was one of my first roles. But over the years, I moved up and working the counter, learning the products and the business there. BDI invested in training a lot, and it still does. And I was able to go to different factory schools along the way. And along with that knowledge, I was able to get promoted to inside sales, and I was a regional buyer for a little while. But really, I've had every position within our company up to vice president. So I've been a outside salesperson, a branch manager, led our marketing team for many years. Worked as a regional manager, and then had multiple regions. And then right now, I'm working. The last 3 years, I've been kind of leading our supply chain team. So it's been a good experience and lots of different responsibilities over my years with BDI. So it's a great company, great leadership, and I really love being here.
All right. Well, the PTDA Industry Summit was this past October in Colorado Springs, and my favorite moment at that summit every year is during the general opening session when the video is shown with PTDA CEO Ann Arnott informing the Warren Pike Award recipient of that honor. And the recipient's reaction to Ann giving that news is always one of surprise and kind of overwhelming humbleness, but it's always great to see. So, Brian, if you don't mind, can you take me through that moment of when Ann told you that you were that year's 2024 Warren Pike recipient and just what that award meant to you?
Well, first of all, I say I was duped. Barb arranged it with Ann when she was in town at Vandenberg that I was coming over to chat briefly about business and then going out to lunch. And I walked into Barb's office, and there was a laptop on the desk or on the table that I couldn't see. And all of a sudden I heard Ann's voice. What is Ann doing? And I just figured Barb was talking to Ann and I'm interrupting a conversation. She said, no, sit down. And I'll be honest, I could not process the words that were coming out because, I left Regal, which was heavy duty industrial PT and bearing, and had gone to Vandenberg, which is not really, it's a niche product for the distributors we're talking about. And I thought, well, I'd been not forgotten, but I just kind of rode off into the sunset into a new career. And I could not believe that I was getting this award because it meant so much to me to be part of the foundation and be part of the growth of the organization over the years and participate in committees. Bill's done the same thing. We've been on committees together. That was my reward, and I felt honored to get the Warren Pike, and I still look at it every day. I can't believe it.
I was wondering, with you now retired, like most people would put that award on their desk, but where do you have that award? Where is it sitting today?
It's on the piano in the living room, so you can't miss it.
Well, no one gets into this industry or stays in this industry for the awards, but like you said, it's definitely, I think it's a showing of that you did something right, certainly during your career. Yeah. So belated congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
Well, both of you have been in the power transmission and bearings market essentially your whole career. And comparing this market 40 years ago to now, technology is obviously the biggest change, like it is for all markets. But other than perhaps in addition to technology, what would you say is the biggest fundamental change you've seen happen in the PT and bearings supply channel during your tenure, whether that's something in customer behavior and demands, manufacturer-distributor relations, inventory management, or something else? So, Bill, do you mind starting there with what's the biggest thing you've seen change in this channel?
Sure, Mike. I guess I'll cover kind of three main points. One would be customer consolidation. So the big manufacturers, the Kraft, Heinz, getting together, and the list goes on. And those create bigger and bigger enterprise-type customers. And there's a unique approach to how different distributors go after that business. But there's been a lot of consolidation on the customer side. Then you move over to the distributor side, there's been even more consolidation. The bigs get bigger, and there's really not a whole bunch of independents being formed on their own like they used to be back in maybe the 70s and 80s. So that creates a bigger channel with smaller number of players, but bigger players. And then the last one is one that really impacts us, is the manufacturer consolidation. And we have some big brands like Real Rexnord that has 60 brands. Well, when I first came in the industry, those were all 60 different companies. Yeah. And now they're all rolled into one. And there's others like Timken and many others that have the same type of approach. But again, that synergy of common, sales forces, common distribution channels, it makes sense for them to do, consolidation. But that's probably the three biggest things I've noticed in my career beyond technology is the consolidation at all those three levels.
Brian, I'll pitch the same to you. Just what are the one or two biggest changes that you've seen in this channel?
Bill nailed my bullet points. I was going to use as an example when I first got hired at Bruning. There was National Seals, there was Chicago Ride, there was New Departure Hyatt Bearings, so the list goes on, and they're ghosts now, or part of a bigger company. This is kind of related to technology, but I feel the extremely sophisticated inventory management systems are another, and Bill's seeing it on the supply chain side, I'm sure, but it's getting more and more sophisticated with the ability to manage inventories at a distributor level so that they do it most economically.
Well, switching gears, I'd like to discuss talent management for a bit, as it's always been seen as one of the biggest challenges in industrial distribution for well more than a decade now, and it looks like it's only going to become a bigger challenge in the years ahead. I guess whichever of you wants to take this one first, how do you think that companies, whether they're a manufacturer or a distributor in PT bearings channel, how are they doing when it comes to evolving their talent acquisition and management efforts to really keep pace with what today's workforce expects?
Bill, I'll go.
Go ahead, Brian.
I just wanted to say off the bat, it's very obvious that larger manufacturers and distributors have their own recruiting and training to ensure a steady flow of sales and management people. Having served on the PTDA Foundation, what we heard overwhelmingly from the independent distributors is it's extremely difficult if you don't have an HR department, if you don't have, the time to do it and the support from your suppliers to get the training done. It's very difficult. So that is the challenge, and people like the PTDA Foundation are helping serve that need for the smaller independent distributors.
Bill, any follow-up there?
Yeah, I guess the thing I've noticed is a lot of the distributors have and manufacturers have homegrown accelerated training programs, trying to get people trained faster than what Brian and I were trained over the years, when we first started out. Now, instead of having 3 years to get that base product knowledge, you get 9 months to do it. And they've got, with all the tools that are available now with LMS systems and other training programs, you can do it a lot faster. And, I guess, we've invested as a company into a full-time hiring recruiter person that really is out there filling positions every day for us. And we're saving on having to pay the recruiting fees with headhunters, those types of activities. But the other thing that's probably new is the work from home options. That creates a real new dynamic of when you're hiring someone, what they're looking for in the role and how and where they're going to spend their time.
Yeah, that's a crucial point right now. And it seems like we're at least 5 full years into this kind of hybrid, and a lot of people still doing remote work, but there's still companies that are kind of figuring out what that right balance is, especially in this channel where some positions just aren't remotable. And so it's kind of balancing that dynamic between what positions can be remote, which ones can't be, and try not to alienate anyone in the organization. Brian, you brought up the PTDA Foundation. Just further on this point, what can you say about the work that PTDA, the PTDA Foundation, and the Bearing Specialists Association, all the above, what can you say about the work that they've done to help their members, support industry education and create talent pipelines for distributors and manufacturers?
Well, I'm familiar with the BSA has a training program. PTDA just put out a online program that they were touting at the summit, and the foundation is really primarily geared toward building awareness about the industry. So we don't get that. I had no idea what a bearing was. It's like and how good of a career you can. I enjoyed working on the industrial careers pathway a couple of years back. We put a lot of effort into making people aware of what this industry can provide to you as a source of income, as a source of knowledge, as a source of satisfaction. And I thought it was very well done. We're kind of in that mode now. It's more getting scholarships to get people into the industry. And I think that's a very strong and positive approach.
Bill, over to you. Just any thoughts on how PTDA, BSA, what these organizations are doing to help members just on the education and, like Brian said, on the awareness front of the industry?
Yeah, on the BSA side, they do have a bearing certification program that I'm deeply involved with, and I'm certified as well. But we promote that, and it really reaches out and gets people more involved in learning more about bearings, become specialists. On the PTDA side, the scholarship's a big deal because every student that receives a scholarship, they're going to talk about it. Yeah. They're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their friends' parents of what they've got, and that's going to spread the word about our industry every time they have those conversations. We're also doing campaigns to students using, some of the more modern technology of Facebook and Instagram and now back with TikTok again, if that's available. But again, trying to get the word out of our industry to those people in their channels that they spend time is very important. And the PTDA and BSA have both in the past had panels with students. So we have at different association meetings, we'd have manufacturers and distributors there with a panel of, say, 6 or 7 students, allowing us to ask questions about what's important to them and what they're looking for employment. And it really, when they attend our panels and those meetings, they then go back to their campuses and talk about what they did and share the story with other potential hirees into the industry.
All right. Well, getting into technology, AI has been definitely the hottest topic in distribution for the past couple of years now, and it certainly seems like it's going to remain so for the foreseeable future. I've spoken with a range of distribution executives that recall how the onset of the fax machine was disruptive and everyone said it would change everything. And then when e-commerce first arrived in distribution, it was going to change everything. And now with AI, it's similar in that its promise is that it's going to change everything. So Bill, this might be more of a question for you and how it relates to what you're doing with the team at BDI. But what's your view on how industrial distributors have embraced AI or how the PT channel has embraced it compared to perhaps other markets?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So I think today there's a lot of discovery going on with distributors and manufacturers, trying to understand where it plays within their organizations. For us, we're seeing a lot of advancements in content development using AI tools. Again, you used to have people running through catalogs, scraping content, that type of activity. Now you have bots doing that type of work to help create content. There's always some intellectual property out there that you've done the work to create the content on your website. And now it's kind of up for grabs. So if you don't have a way to stop the bots from doing that, you're really going to share that content with really anyone that can have access to it. But our biggest advantage that we're seeing going forward is the way you can search for products now using AI tools. We're experimenting with the purchase version of Chat GPT, and we're demonstrating how you can search with a prompt attributes of a product and a zip code and saying, "Hey, Chat GPT, find me this bearing with these two different attributes within 50 miles of the zip code, and it pulls back and it shows where those things are at, and it's pretty amazing what it can do. So I think we're still on the early footsteps of what that could do for us down the stream, but the capacity and ability is really unmeasurable right now.
Brian, any follow-up with your perspective on AI's role in this channel, or are you just happy to not have to be involved with the decision-making around AI going forward anymore?
You kind of stated it perfectly. I know there's going to be some challenges with the consolidation of work tasks, and which may lead in the downsizing, I guess, best way to say it. And there's some really good people out there that might not be needed anymore because AI is prevalent. But I do feel that it's going to give better analytics, more powerful analytics on for both manufacturers and distributors, so they can predict inventories and sales and all that stuff that everybody likes to focus on. It seems like this is really going to be a powerful tool for that.
It's just fascinating to see what distributors and manufacturers, how they're scaling up what they're doing with AI, and some of them are just dipping their toes in the AI, and some are already deeply involved. So it's definitely everyone's on a different stage of that journey.
Yeah.
And alongside AI, one of the technology topics we're seeing gain particular traction with is with product information management. And I know that historically, distributors and manufacturers haven't been great at sharing product information, mostly out of a sense of competitiveness. They just don't want to share too much out there. But we've also seen plenty of examples where both sides really benefit from that data sharing. And that really seems to be at the heart of what the Bearing Specialists Association and PTDA are doing with the PIE technology platform, with PIE representing Product Information Exchange. Bill, I know you were involved on the development of that platform. So can you give a synopsis of what PIE is and how it works?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So I'll go back in time a little bit to 2013 when I was working with Rex Davis, who at the time I think was with IBT within the BSA Association, and there was a hub task force developed. And the time we knew there was demand for this need to have a way to collect information from manufacturers to be able to share on distributors' websites. Again, that's early on. So we did some research back then. We looked at IDEA, which is more of an electrical distributor manufacturer platform. It really was not a good fit for us. We then looked at GDSN and GS1, which are more global data synchronization networks for more global retail environments. Again, it didn't get into the weeds enough for our product attributes. So we searched and ultimately we found Blue Meteor, which is a company that provided really a great PIM platform that allowed us to create templates by what we wanted to cover. Again, we have many out there today, but it allows the manufacturer to take their PIM data, map it to the Blue Meteor website, which is now called PIE, one time, and allow that to then be distributed to their authorized channel partners like BDI or whoever. And then you can then pull down the data and load your PIM to then serve your e-commerce and ERP platforms.
And then, Brian, since your career has spanned roles at both distributors and manufacturers, I'm curious to get your perspective on that product information exchange between both sides. Can you share to what extent either Fannenberg, Regal Power, NSK, or any of those other suppliers from earlier in your career, can you share how they might have shared product information with their suppliers or distributors? And have you seen momentum move more towards that more open sharing between both sides?
Well, initially, Mike, it was me supplying product information to my distributors using simple spreadsheets. I mean, that's how basic it was. I was one of the first guys to have I wouldn't call it a laptop, I'd call it a portable computer with 2 floppy disks. But I would go through the data, sales data, and report it back to them and have discussions about perhaps what they should be ordering. And then things kept getting more sophisticated, and I started to get some support from our IT group and running reports when we had more sophisticated enterprise systems. And but to me, you say what's the momentum, what's the impetus? and Bill knows this as well. It's like, if you want to do business with me, you better be on the PIM. you, your data better be in Pi, or you're not doing business with me, because we're just too reliant on that data.
That makes sense. And yeah, it's interesting to see how fast it's gotten to that point where distributors, manufacturers are now locked into what the gains that they're seeing from that product information, those platforms, with PIE being a great source for that.
Yep.
And Bill, I know that PTDA and BSA continue to grow the number of product categories on the PIE platform, the details of which can be found at pietechnologyplatform.org. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the total number of categories on the platform as of this recording is now at 32, which includes 8 PT/MC categories, with 3 in development. And I think those in development are adjustable and variable speed drives, enclosed gearing, and open gearing. Can I assume that the broader plan is to keep expanding those counts?
Mike, yes, that's a definite yes. As we get more manufacturers on the PIE system and platform, that'll drive more distributors participate, and it's kind of a flywheel effect. That the more we get on both sides, the more robust it will be over time, and the more value will be on both sides for both manufacturers and distributors.
All right, so wrapping up here, I always like to end things on an optimistic note. And we know that there's numerous challenges facing industrial distributors today, whether it's economic uncertainty, technology adoption, supply chain conditions, talent management, like we mentioned, new disruption sources, all the geopolitical issues, and more. But there's also plenty to be positive about. So why don't we have Brian start with what gives you hope or optimism about the future of industrial distribution?
Well, Mike, to me, it now, with my perspective and looking back over my career, it's the people in the organizations like PTDA and the industry in general that are just great people, warm, welcoming, and always ready to help. And actually, this PIE effort is a great example of this willingness to share and work together to make the industry better. So I would say it's the people. It's a people business. It's a relationship business, and that makes it the stronger of all choices.
I love it. Bill, over to you. Same question. What gives you hope or optimism about this channel?
Thanks, Mike. I always like to pick 3 different topics, but I'll cover them quickly. So I guess the first one is my optimism comes from really the market having a really acknowledging value creation as a business model for the distributors that are out there and manufacturers that we work with. When end users appreciate that and see value in that, it means there's long-term success for our industry. Number 2, I'd say further business process automation. There's still a lot of things that are out there that AI is going to help us with that may or may not displace people. It may put them in different roles. Maybe there's more valuable roles that they're taking on rather than doing some maybe mundane type data type work. And the last one is I'm very optimistic about a more streamlined channel between end user, distributor, manufacturer with regards to e-commerce and inventory and supply chain management. I think there's still lots of ground to gain there.
That's great. Well, before we sign off here, I want to give one last chance to share some final thoughts or parting words for our audience. So, Brian, starting with you, any last words before we close out?
Mike, thanks for letting me tell my story. I hope if someone listens all the way to the end here, they realize that a great career can be had in our industry, in industrial distribution. And my final comment is go Bills.
Right on. Bill, over to you.
Thanks, Mike. I guess, the thing I like to see happen going forward is if I could ask everyone that listens to this podcast is to talk about this industry, talk about both associations, talk about it with anyone and everyone. We definitely need people in this industry, and it's a great industry to work in. And I can assure you that once you learn the products and learn the industry, you'll have a fantastic, stable career over a long period of time, always with advancement and growth. So good luck.
Well, that's great insight from both of you. Well, for the last time, Brian and Bill, thanks for joining the podcast.
Appreciate it, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the MDM podcast, which again was brought to you by our AI for Distributors virtual summit coming on March 12th. Find details from the events drop down on mdm.com and in the promo blog for this episode. Like what you just heard, you can find all of our past podcast episodes at mdm.com/podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.